Free will is a pretty tough question, and I can't say I have a conclusive answer, but I will show you a variety of ways of thinking about it and some answers, but not each answer doesn't necessarily work if you look at free will in another way. For example, in psychology, one case against free will could be the subconscious, this Freudian idea about the subconscious, that you have these complexes built up, and that determines what you like, what you don't like, why you like some music or you don't. And Carl Jung, of course, is also in the Freudian school, but he goes more deep into the subconscious, where the subconscious is almost like a superconscious. It's like almost goes up. It's like on a religious level. So over there's even, if you take the Jungian view, there's even more influence from the subconscious and the collective unconscious on your decisions. But that's not really what people usually talk about with free will. Most people are aware that the music you like is not a rational decision. It's not really the thing that's debated. But it does show something, that we, to some extent, we can't assume we fully have free will. But you could say if the subconscious is a separate entity, then maybe it has free will, and then you have your ego has its own free will. And the free will of the ego, I guess, is usually what people are debating, like whether I can make a decision, to listen to music, to eat a snack, to get out of bed, to go for a jog. And well, that just what the ego does. It makes decisions, mitigates situations between your subconscious and other people. So in that sense, there still is free will there. Then there's the debate in psychology between the behaviorists and the cognitive scientists. Behaviorists are trying to break down the human psychology into very simple mechanisms, reactive mechanisms. And the cognitive scientists are trying to think about it with working models, like computations. And cognitive science became more popular as computers became more popular. And a big opponent of behaviorist was Noam Chomsky, who he was a linguist, but he's also in some sense a cognitive scientist, because he was thinking about the mind in working models of language. But in general, he also thinks about cognitive science, and he has a very good definition about free will, where he says there certainly is free will, and the way he defines it is that there's an infinite amount of ways you could respond to an infinite amount of situations, that something totally new could happen to you, and you will come up with some response that will actually conform to the thing you're reacting to. To some people, that's not what free will means, because the response is the thing you're responding to is external. You don't have a choice in the situation of which you're being confronted, and you just use your whatever instincts and subconscious mechanisms you have to respond to it. But I like that idea of free will, and it prioritizes creativity. The fact that you have every human has creativity to some degree. He's not talking about like paintings. He's talking about just that you could respond in an original way to an original situation. And I mean, that kind of beats the behaviorism idea. I think behaviorism is very useful And I don't know if every behaviorist fully commits to viewing all of human psychology through the behaviorist lens, but it's just very useful to have the study of these mechanisms. For example, for addiction. And maybe the fact that there are addictions shows that there is free will, because you could also be not addicted or overcome an addiction. So, but a lot of people are cautious of addiction. Like, people will be afraid to do something because it might be addictive, and they just can't control themselves. Like, or you might watch, scroll social media, and you don't want to. You'd rather read a book. You know, and it's very hard to go off of that. And but it's certainly possible to make that hard decision, but it's difficult probably because there's a variety of subconscious things and instincts and whatever. That could be a topic for another video. But so with psychology, the free will debate is not actually that big. The free will debate is much bigger with philosophy. And in philosophy, the free will debate is not really about the human mind. It's usually about physics and metaphysics and time. It's about time and whether we live in a deterministic universe or if there's really an open option space. And this goes back to Laplace and this idea about he had this thought experiment, Laplace's demon, which is very commonly used. And Laplace's demon is a demon in European psychology is usually a kind of just a thought experiment where you invent like a kind of god that you just decide what he does. Like, let's say, like for example, Descartes, he says like, oh, what if a demon creates a simulation in which I live and I don't know if it's real? But then his solution to that was that since he could doubt whether he lives in a real world or not, and he could question his experience, he exists as a person, which could also be part of the free will argument. But Laplace's demon is a different demon. It's a demon that if he knew every single position of every single particle and object in the universe, and as far as we know of science, or at least until quantum physics, everything worked in this Newtonian way where, you know, one thing hits another thing, it moves. So like billiard balls, like if you look at a billiard ball moving on the table, you know, you could calculate, for example, everything that's going to happen to the other billiard balls. But I guess what makes the game of billiards interesting is that a human being has to make the decision how he hits the ball. And so with Laplace's demon, this includes the human mind. And still today, as far as we know, you just have a bunch of brain cells and they have certain charges, certain neurotransmitters, and they're just, it's like a very complicated game of billiards. They're just tapping away at each other. So if this demon knew the position of every brain cell that you have, every neurotransmitter, it also knew like whether you had a cup of coffee nearby and you're about to drink it, and that you had the exact position of neurons that you're for sure going to drink it. You could tell ahead of time, and he knew what everyone else was going to do, and that every leaf of every tree is going to fall in exactly this pattern because the wind is going to blow on it in exactly this pattern, and you knew the wind is going to blow on it in this pattern because the wind comes from something else. That it's all like mechanical, completely mechanical, and this leaves no space for free will. And this is actually how this is a long-standing worldview of science. And the big question that this leaves open is about consciousness. How do we have an experience. Like, how do I know I'm seeing a certain color or tasting a certain food? Like, why don't I just do it blindly, like a mechanical machine? And there are people that have panpsychist philosophy, which thinks that consciousness must be somehow fundamental in physics. There's all kinds of speculation of quantum physics being part of consciousness, as Sir Roger Penrose first put forth. This is very popular. And also, quantum physics is one of the cases in philosophy against hard determinism, because quantum physics, although it might not be fully understood, but it shows that on the smallest level of particles don't behave in this Newtonian way, this straightforward way. They are unpredictable and seemingly random, and there is a debate between whether they're really random or there's some layer that we don't understand. And Einstein was the big proponent of there being a deeper layer that we just don't know. And Niels Bohr was his friend and opponent who pushed for just the view of quantum physics that we have now. And the famous quotes is that Einstein said, "God doesn't play dice," and Niels Bohr said, "Don't tell God what to do." And this is a debate that is still ongoing, especially with consciousness. People throw it into there, but I don't know if enough is known with quantum physics to throw consciousness into it. But consciousness, just whether consciousness is some higher physical thing or not, it doesn't necessarily prove there is free will. But it's with philosophy, you don't need to wait for the proof of something. You could just speculate. So you could say, if all the brain cells in your brain, is that your mind, or is your mind like a higher level thing, like they somehow combine into this single like higher dimensional mind. So then we would have a mind and a body thing, and this was explored in philosophy for a long time. Descartes believed in the mind and the body as two separate things, the material and the soul. And this is called dualism. And so in philosophy, there's people that are dualists, there's people that are materialists, there's people that are idealists, which idealists think that there's only mind, there's no material world, that's an illusion. That's something else. But in terms of free will, having a mind being more than just the parts, the mechanical parts, it somehow functions from a higher plane, and it could look back down and make a decision as some kind of unit. The mind, that adds something to free will. So in terms of like physics and philosophy, that's the case for free will. To have free will, it would mean that we aren't fully mechanical, that there's some physical property that's almost like spiritual or something. And then there's the religious debates of free will. Could be overlap with this philosophy or the psychology ones, but oftentimes it's a question between God and the person. So, did God allow people to have free will? And I'm talking in the Judeo-Christian tradition, where why would there be sins if we didn't have free will? So, but then how is there evil? How could God allow for evil? So these are the theological free will debates. And my conclusion is I don't know. I don't know what free will means. Like the funny saying I came up with for myself that I'm just satisfied with is that there is free and there's will, but I don't know if there's free will because you can't just spontaneously make something up. You have to experience something first to think of something else. You have to. But I have a will. I decide to do something. Like let's say I have an idea for a drawing. Did I choose to have that idea? No, it came out of my subconscious. It just popped up in my head, but I could will it to put it down on paper. So I could have a motivation. And you could say there's competing motivations. There's a motivation to stay in bed. There's a motivation to go for a run. And different ones win depending on their strength or something. So that's will. That's a will. You have a will to do something or a lack of it. And then we have freedom with the. I think the way Noam Chomsky describes it, I think that's basically just freedom. We have creative freedom. There's a lot of options that we could think of. There's a lot of ideas, words, combination of words, infinite. So that's I would define that as like freedom. Yeah, and that could interact and you could call it free will, but usually the word free will is such a strong word. It's like some impossible thing. Like it just like we can't have perfect free will. It just spontaneously think of something original. And very original people often don't believe in free will because they're really responding to the world. They're like using their dreams and subconscious. I was reading Nikola Tesla. He wrote that he didn't believe in free will, and he had a book on human energy or something. And he talked about how he just would have images pop up in his mind based on things he had seen previously. That made him think there's no free will. But he's one of the most creative people who ever lived. How could he not believe in free will? Thought of brand new things. But I guess strictly speaking, the word free will, it just didn't fit for him because he knew that he was well aware of the mechanisms behind his ideas, that it wasn't just some spontaneous thing where I'm gonna decide something brand new just right now. If you do that, something will pop up from your subconscious, a combination of memories. So that's it. That's all I have to say. I hope that was interesting and you think about it and enjoy. All right, bye.